Kenton, I am so happy to have you here on the Social Impact podcast because you designed, in my opinion, one of the coolest, most practical social innovation of the past decade. It's one of the things that seems so obvious when you explain it. It makes sense instantly, and yet nobody before you launched such a product and distributed it in more than 100 countries now to, I believe, more than 300,000 children living in poverty. And it's a great example of a small thing, a shoe that can grow, that you can wear for years, that can make a lasting difference on so many children's lives. And you've been promoting this concept of small things can make big difference. And for sure, we're going to talk about that later on. But my first question is quite simple. How did you come up with the shoe that grows?
Well, you gave a great introduction there. That was perfect. I appreciated that. Very kind words.
Mm.
And I'll start by saying I am not an inventor by nature. I'm not an engineer. I really don't think that way. So this has all been a very unexpected journey these last kind of 10 years. But for me, I right after college, I decided to travel the world for about a year, and so I lived in Ecuador and then lived in Kenya. And when I lived in Kenya, I got to volunteer at a small orphanage, and I lived right there and worked there with the kids, and just an incredible experience. But probably about 2 or 3 weeks into my time there, one day we were walking, all the kids and I were walking down the road in our village, and I remember it was this really hot day, this dusty road. And as I looked down next to me, there's a little girl, I'll never forget, she was wearing this white dress. And as I looked down, I was just completely shocked at how small her shoes were. She was wearing these shoes that were just way too small for her feet. They were so small, she had to cut open the front to let her toes stick out. And I remember, like, I don't know if I'd never seen these shoes before, if she hadn't worn them before or what, but this was like the first time that I noticed this. And it just really bugged me, really impacted me. I looked around, and a lot of the kids either had no shoes or they had shoes that were just way too small.
Yeah.
And so later that day, I asked the director of the orphanage, why do so many kids have shoes that are too small? And he said that more than a year before, they'd received a great shipment of donated clothes and shoes and things, but they had not received any donations since then. And he said, it's a very poor orphanage. They can't afford to buy the kids new shoes every time their feet grow. And without any more donations, he said, the kids, they just have to do the best with what they have. And sometimes the kids would trade with each other or kind of pass them down. Sometimes they just wouldn't wear any shoes, or sometimes they'd cut open the front so their toes could stick out. But just right then and there, I just had this idea, hey, what if there was a pair of shoes that could adjust and expand their size? What if there was a pair of shoes that could grow? It seems like that would make sense for these kids. And it's the only idea I've ever had, but that's where it came from. And I wrote it down. And when I got back home, I really wanted to do something to try to make a difference, and jumped in with that idea. And it's been a fun journey with it ever since.
Brilliant. And, I'm listening to your story, and the first key takeaway that we can take from it is for people that want to have an impact, people that want to innovate on the social field, go on the ground and experience
Yes.
firsthand the reality of the day-to-day lives of the communities you want to help. And by doing that, by going on the ground in Kenya, living with these children, you were able to really get a sense of what they were living, and then have an idea to address one of the problems of poverty.
Yeah, I'm so glad you highlighted that.
Mm.
That to me, that's one of the most important things, especially if you're looking at innovation, and if you want to really try to improve something and do it better, you can't do that from far away. Like I love Tom's shoes. I was
Mm.
somewhat aware before I did my traveling that there were kids around the world who didn't have shoes, and that was a problem. But I didn't understand it until I
Yeah.
lived in Kenya. I saw it happening. I saw what a difference it makes when kids have shoes versus when they don't. I mean, it just took on such a personal level too. I got to know the kids,
Mm.
and I wanted them to have a good pair of shoes because they were my friends, and
Yeah.
I really cared about them. And so yeah, I couldn't agree more. And then especially for anyone who really wants to help with international poverty, to go travel, if you're able.
Yeah.
I know right now things are a little crazy with travel, but you know yeah, travel if you can, live with people, get close to people, and get there in the trenches, and it's amazing what you'll learn, not only about others but what you learn about yourself too. um, and I'll even throw out a little tidbit. It's not like everything went perfectly on
Yeah.
my travels. I had so many things that went wrong. It's not easy, and yet it was, looking back, it was one of the best things I've ever done in my life. And I encourage anybody, to get out there
Yeah.
and really experience stuff.
Exactly. And it was a long process. It was not that easy to come up with the shoe, to produce it. I believe it took you and your team 6 years from having your idea to start distributing shoes. What happened during these 6 years? What were your main challenges for you folks?
Yeah, great question. So it did. So once I got back home, I decided to jump in with the idea. I grabbed a few friends, and we kind of jumped in together. But we didn't. Again, I was not an engineer, not an inventor. Didn't know what I was doing, especially with shoes. So the first thing we tried to do was just give the idea away. We didn't really care who did it. We just wanted someone to do it. We thought it was a good idea to have a growing shoe available for kids in poverty. And so for at least a year, we tried to give it away just for free. Nike, Reebok, Adidas, Crocs, Toms, everybody. I talked to probably 30 different shoe companies, and everybody said no.
Okay.
So I decided to do it on our own. Went out in the garage for a few months and just trying to piece together different shoes and cut them up, glue this, glue that, just trying to make a prototype. And if anyone is ever in Nampa, Idaho, and wants to come by our office, you can see the world's worst shoe prototypes. We just did a terrible job. We just didn't know what we were doing.
Yeah.
So we knew that the big companies didn't want to help us. We knew we couldn't do it on our own. And we finally, through a roundabout way, we finally found a small shoe design company
Mm.
in Portland, Oregon, that had just gotten started. And we told them our idea, and they loved it. And they helped us. Really, we wouldn't be here today without
Mm.
them. They helped us go through a bunch of ideas, a bunch of iterations, make that real first prototype. And then we did a little bit of fundraising. By that time, we had started our nonprofit
Mm.
called Because International, to give it some structure. So we did a little bit of fundraising and had enough money to make 100 pairs of the prototype. And then my wife and I took them back to Kenya, put them in 4 different schools, and had kids try them out for about a year. Got some great feedback from the kids wearing the shoes, and that kind of got us to the first batch. We were able to make a first batch of 3,000 pairs, and they lived in the guest bedroom of my house, and I was really happy. And I really thought that's all it was ever going to be.
Yeah.
We had done what we set out to do. We made what we called the shoe that grows. It
Mhm.
could grow 5 sizes. It could last for years, and we were just really happy with it. And it was kind of a hobby. I had a different full-time job, a different career, it was just kind of something I did on the side, and that's all I ever thought it was going to be. But yeah, that from when I jumped in with the idea to when we had that first batch of 3,000 pairs, it took 6 years.
Awesome. Well, it's a good thing you didn't give up, because obviously today, as I mentioned earlier, your shoes have been distributed in more than 100 countries, and I believe you even manufactured those shoes in Kenya, the country where it all started.
Yes, we do. We're really excited about that. And I should say, I gave up many times,
Hmm.
but I only gave up for an hour or two. I remember, again, I never want to give the impression that this was easy.
Yeah.
I think anybody that does anything, it's never really easy. But for me, I knew I didn't want to burn out entirely, so I'd let myself, you know, have a tough night and get real frustrated, and I'll just go watch a movie, or I'll go eat some ice cream or
Yeah.
something. I think doing that really allowed me to take a little perspective and kind of keep on going.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was difficult, it was tough, and so glad that my friends and so many others encouraged me to keep going. um, and so then, yeah, we had our shoes, we were so excited, but we never wanted to just stop there. We really wanted to try to squeeze as much impact
Hmm.
out of this as we could. So not only getting shoes distributed to kids who need them, but we thought, how could we bring as many jobs as we can through this process? And our first goal was to produce the shoes where they're being used the most. So of the 100 countries where they're being used, East Africa, Kenya, Uganda, Ethiopia, that's really one of the areas where they're used the most, where we have a lot of shoes distributed. And so we looked into producing there, and it took a while, but yes, as of today, we produce all of our shoes at a local factory in Kenya, and it brings about 15 jobs. The people that work at the factory who just work on producing our shoes, and they make such a great product. It's very high quality, just a great pair of shoes. And so a lot of them stay right there. We have a
Hmm.
full-time employee on our team who lives in Nairobi. So we keep inventory in Nairobi, and we also then send shoes back here to the US and keep inventory here in Idaho as well.
Okay, great. Well, I think it's a great way to maximize your social impact, and yeah, it's been more than 10 years now since you've had the idea of the shoe that grows, and you certainly made it happen. But you are not stopping there. I understand you have plans to continue designing products to alleviate poverty beyond
Yes.
just the shoe. So, on
Yeah.
what products are you
Yeah.
currently working on?
Yeah, great question. So, we reached a point a few years ago, the team and I, we really thought, are we just a shoe company? Should we just focus on our product, the shoe that grows, or do we want to do more than that? And I think we all knew that we really wanted to do more than that. We really felt like, not just shoes, but there are other products, and essentially small products. That's kind of what we work with mostly.
Mm.
But we really felt like there are small products that really just make a big difference. And there are still challenges that need solutions. There are still issues that we think small products could help be one solution in to fight against those issues. So we just really believe in the power of these small products to make a big difference. And so then the question became, well, who should think of new ideas for these small products? And kind of what we talked about earlier, we knew that you do kind of have to be in the trenches and living in those situations to really understand what's happening.
Mm.
And now I'm not. I don't live in Kenya anymore. I just live here in my hometown in Idaho in the U.S. And the majority of our team does as well. So we really thought, we believe in in the power of these small products. We want to help bring more small products that can make a difference, to the world, but we're not going to be the ones to think of the ideas or design or create them. But luckily, like, of course, there are so many people around the world who are living in these situations, who have amazing ideas for products that can make a difference.
Yeah.
And so we thought, if there's anything we can do to help them, because we saw ourselves, it took me 6 years to work on my idea, lots of challenges, lots of ups and downs. And so, and I had many people help me along the way. So we thought, if we can do anything to help others with their ideas for products that can make a difference, let's do it. So we started this new program last year. We call it the Pursuit Incubator. We're trying to help global entrepreneurs pursue their small product ideas. Last year we worked with 18 global entrepreneurs. This year we actually just this week we're launching our first cohort of the year. So we have 10 entrepreneurs in a cohort. It's a 60-day online training that helps the entrepreneurs take the next step with their idea. Some of them have a great idea and they're still working on the design, and we're going to help them with that. Others have already created a prototype or a kind of a finished product, and they just don't quite have the right business model around it. And so we're also helping them with that too. But yeah, we are so excited to come alongside these amazing global entrepreneurs who have great ideas for a product that they think could make a difference. And if anybody out there is listening, you think you've got a great idea, please get in touch with us. We would love to help you, whatever stage you're at. We'd love to help you with your idea, because we want to recreate what we did with our shoes. What we feel, with our shoes, it's a great product that meets a need and can help people who use it. And then it's also bringing jobs through the production, through the business side of the product. And we want to help others do that. Great products that help people, and also job creation and increased economy through a good, solid business around the product. So yeah, we're super excited. And, to be honest, I think as we grow, the work we're doing through that incubator, the work we're doing to support entrepreneurs, is going to be the bulk of our work at some point. I think our shoes were really just our start. And I'm so excited to see who we can help and how far they can go.
Awesome. Well, it's great to see that you are trying to, build this whole social entrepreneurship ecosystem for products to alleviate poverty. You also have a project that I love. It's Grow 5. So I love the fact that, you created a purely social product to be distributed for children in highly disadvantaged areas. And then you notice that you might have also a large demand for the same product in your home in the US. And if you can make some well-deserved profits from your product, I think it's amazing, especially if a portion of sales will help support your social entrepreneurship incubator and your nonprofit side of the business. My question is, was it challenging to create a commercial branch from a nonprofit enterprise?
Yes. That'd be a simple answer. It wasn't, it's not impossible by any means. We really looked to see what other examples are there of someone who started a nonprofit first and then saw that their solution had some commercial possibilities. And maybe we just aren't very good at research, but we didn't find very many examples of people who've done that. And so we didn't see a blueprint to follow, and we kind of tried to make one up a little bit. And so that was kind of the first challenge. Was it just wasn't very common to have this happen. The reverse, people who've started a commercial company and then they'd like to add, a foundation or a kind of a nonprofit arm to it, that's a little bit more common. And then of course there are so many, commercial companies that operate as with their B Corp certification, or they're just very socially conscious, and that's wonderful as well. But so the first thing we needed to get our leadership really on the same page with the vision of what we were trying to do. And really what we were trying to do was find a way to get more revenue to the nonprofit. That's kind of our first goal with offering this commercial shoe. We had a lot of people asking if they could buy our shoes commercially, and we always said no. It really just wasn't something that we did. That wasn't part of our mission as a nonprofit. But as we saw people asking, we thought, if they're willing to buy them, if we can sell them for a profit, and if a portion of that could come back to our nonprofit work, hey, that's just like a fundraiser, right? Like that's, that, not that it's free money, but it's a great opportunity that we need to take advantage of. And so that's really where it started. Our board of directors on the nonprofit, they totally saw that. There was a few challenges, but for the most part, they saw that opportunity. And so the nonprofit owns the majority of our commercial company. And we love that connection. And then on the commercial side, we kind of launched with a Kickstarter. We wanted to see the interest, and had a great launch. Truth be told, it's gone slow since then. We're not great at selling a commercial product yet, but we are learning how to do it. And we sell maybe 50 to 75 pairs of our commercial shoes a month. And so it's not nothing, but it's it's not anything gigantic yet. We sell on our website, Grow5, GROFIVE, grow5.com, and they're also available on Amazon. But it's interesting. We want to do well there, because the better we do with our commercial sales, more money comes back to the nonprofit. At the same time, it's not it's not a nonprofit. It's a commercial business. We're trying to sell shoes. We're trying to sell them at a profit, with a good margin. We're having, honestly, we're having a little trouble with the brand and how to tell the story. It's not the shoe that grows. It's a little different story, and yet it's all about that. I don't know. It really has been interesting. It hasn't been just a seamless transition, and we're learning how to do it better. And I'd encourage anyone, if for some reason you're in that same position, give us a holler. We'd love to talk to you about it. There's another really interesting company that has done a similar thing. They did it about a year after we did. They're called Eco Soap Bank. And they, I believe, if I'm getting it right, Samir, I'm not recalling his last name, but their founder, his name is Samir. Samir started the nonprofit first, but then the soap that they were making was just awesome. And they thought there was some commercial opportunity there. And so they started with a Kickstarter as well. They ran a very successful Kickstarter and launched a commercial side of their product too. And so there are some examples out there. And but really it's just kind of a weird situation, and we tried to make the best of it, and we're still trying to work hard to do well with the nonprofit and do well with this commercial company too.
Yeah, but I can definitely see a link, and it makes sense, in my opinion, to have a commercial side to help thrive the whole nonprofit ecosystem. I watched your TED Talk, and it was a very successful TED Talk. I noticed the audience was quite responsive, which is not always the case for TED Talks. And I loved your view on what you call practical compassion. And you've been a champion of practical compassion all throughout your career. And it's a concept that is easy to understand, and I see a lot of value in further promoting this idea. So for our listeners and our viewers, can you introduce us to this notion of practical compassion?
Yeah.
How would you define it?
Yeah, practical compassion, to me, it's doing small things that make a big difference. I really believe in the power of small things. And for me, I'm a very simple guy. I really am.
Mm,
You know, I don't have a doctorate, you know, from Harvard or anything like that. I'm not a celebrity. I'm not a billionaire. You know, I'm really just a simple guy from a small town in a place nobody's ever heard of. And so I always grew up with this attitude of, you know, if you can do something to help, you know, you should do it. And in the midst of that, it's good to be smart. You
mm,
want to be sustainable with what you do, and you don't want to cause more harm than good. You know, there's a lot to think about. But in the end, it's really, to me, it's pretty simple. Like if you have a chance to help somebody, if you have a chance to show compassion, um, especially in really practical ways, you know, for me it was, boy, there are these kids around me who are outgrowing their shoes and they don't have any options for more. What if I make them a shoe that could grow?
mm,
Then they could just adjust it whenever their feet would grow and they still have a pair of shoes that fit. Does that solve every problem for these kids? You know, the 300,000 pairs of shoes that we've gotten out there, are those kids all perfectly fine now? Like, not at all. They still have challenges and issues. They still have really big problems that they're going to face. But does it help? Does it make a difference? I believe that it does 100%. And so I'm just a big fan of this belief that small things really do make a big difference, and there's power in small things. And if you can live your life with practical compassion, even if you only help one person,
mm,
uh, that's a great place to start. And that's probably the other part of it for me too. I can get really overwhelmed sometimes. I remember even on my trip to Kenya, and not that it's a broken place by any means. The people are wonderful. It is an amazing country. Um, but there are challenges. And I saw myself getting overwhelmed by the challenges that they face. And where do you start? You know, clean water, food, you know, health, education. There's just so many places where there are challenges, and here in the U.S. as well. I mean, here at home as well. I have the same kind of thoughts. I can get overwhelmed by the challenges
yeah,
that the world is facing, and especially now with what's happening with you know,
yeah,
COVID-19. It's overwhelming if you allow it to be, because it's so hard to think of the perfect solution. It's so hard to think of the silver bullet solution that's going to solve every problem. But if you take an approach where you know that, you know, small things really can make a difference,
mm,
and if you try to see the world through the lens of practical compassion, looking for ways to help, even if it just helps one or two people, even if it just helps in a small way, um, hey, that's something I can do. That's something anybody can do. That's something a kid could do, a teenager could do, you know, an older person could do. You know, not all of us are Bill Gates. Not all of us can donate, you know, millions and millions of dollars to make a really big difference in that kind of a way. Um, but you know, I some anybody can run a little Facebook campaign to try to raise $100, you know, or anybody can go to their neighbor and ask how they could help. Anybody can check in with someone that they know at work and see how they're doing. You know what I mean?
yeah,
So for me, like, that gets me off the couch. That
mm,
gets me up and gets me going. If I know that I could do something small, it doesn't have to be perfect, but even if it helps somebody, that matters. That makes a difference. So that's what really caused me to do my shoe idea. That's what gets me going even today, as I, you know, still need motivation to try to go out and make a difference. I know that I can do something today that's small, but that small thing really is going to make a big difference. And I encourage anybody to, if you haven't ever done anything, if you're not sure where to start, just think of one thing to do and do it, you know. Or if you've been working at this for a while, if you've
mm,
got something that you love doing and you wonder if it really does matter, I want to tell you today, it matters. It matters to people. It matters, and it makes a difference, and you need to keep going and keep doing it. Small things, there really is a lot of power in
mm.
small things.
Yeah, and they all add up, you know, at the end of the day.
Yeah,
one simple things and one other, like as you said, you might not solve poverty with shoes, but it's still one of the problems that you are bringing something new to the table, and another organization will work on water, for example. So it all adds up at the end of the day.
Yep.
Well, I believe that was a very inspiring way to end our discussion today. Kenton, thank you so much for your time today and for sharing your journey and insights on the social issue you are trying to solve. Becauseinternational.org. What else?
That's a great place to start.
Yeah.
Or if people want to you could Google the shoe that grows.
Yeah.
That's a great way to find us too. We're on social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. And I just want to say thanks so much for this conversation, Erwan. This was fun. You asked great questions, and appreciate you and what you're doing. And yeah, excited to see who listens to this, and if we can get them involved or help them out in any way. Please, 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 anybody, feel free to reach out to us, reach out to me. We are all in this together.